Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Marilyn and my channel's Making with Marilyn. Now I do all things crafty, but on today's video I'm going to make a sublimation tumbler for my mother-in-law. Now on a recent video I made this sublimation towel for her. She loves sunflowers and so I wanted to make a tumbler. It won't really match this. I'm not even sure it's going to coordinate with it, but it's going to have sunflowers on it because she loves them. So here in a minute, I'll show you the design that I'll use, then I'll print it out. But for now, I want to show you the other things. I have my sublimation tumbler. I'm going to clean it with some alcohol and paper towels. Then I'll put my design around my tumbler. I'll use some heat tape. I'll use butcher paper to cradle it when I put it in my tumbler press. And then you can't really see it, but my tumbler press is over here to the left. Now, just recently, I discovered that on the tumblers that I'm using now, I don't have to use nearly as much time in my tumbler press for the design to look really good. In fact, on tumblers I'm using now, my old process was burning them. So if you have issues with your press or your convection oven, your colors aren't quite right, just do some experiments. Use less pressure, more pressure, less time. Once you get it figured out for your particular brand of tumbler and your press, you're going to get consistent results time and time again. Now the first thing that I want to do so that it has a few minutes to dry while I'm printing my print is I want to go ahead and clean this. So I have alcohol, it's just in this spray bottle. I don't really want to get this area wet. So I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm going to spray my alcohol on the paper towel, holding it over my trash can. So I have it on my paper towel. So first I'm just going to go ahead and clean the tumbler, making sure I get all the areas all the way from the top to the bottom. Then another paper towel just to dry that off. Now alcohol evaporates and dries really quickly, but I still want to give this a few minutes to dry just so we don't have any issues. Now while that's drying, I'll go ahead and print my design. Now the file that I'm going to use today, I found in Creative Fabrica's website. So let me go to my downloads. And it's right here. I'll show it to you really quickly. I just loved it because it had these sunflowers on it. And since my mother-in-law loves sunflowers and I'm giving her that sunflower towel, I thought she'd really enjoy this. So I'll go ahead and click on download just to show you the process. Like I said, I've already downloaded this. Now here it is. And so I'm going to save this to my desktop so I can go right here, click on png.png, and then I'll change it to my desktop. I already have it on my desktop, so I'll say replace. Okay, so I can close out of that, and then I'm going to go ahead and open it in Inkscape. Now you can use any software that you usually print from, but I prefer Inkscape. So the first thing I need to do is go up to File, Document Properties, because right now I have a 12 by 12 template, and I need to change that to 8.5 by 11. So I'll click on Document Properties. I'll select the 8.5 by 11. Then I can just X out of here, and it's changed. I can get my image into Inkscape one of two ways. I can say File, Import, and then go search for it. Then say Open and OK. Or another way would be just to, on my desktop, drag it into the Inkscape software. Again, I just use these default import settings. I don't need it there twice. I'll go ahead and delete one of those, but I did want to show you there's two ways to do it. Now for the tumbler that I'm going to use, I use a width of 9.35 and I use a height of 8.2. And your dimensions really depend on the brand of tumbler you're using, so be sure and measure it. The prior tumblers that I had, I used a slightly different size. The first time I used my current tumblers, I printed that out and it wasn't big enough. It wasn't tall enough. It was big enough around, but it wasn't tall enough. So be sure to measure your tumblers if you're using a new tumbler. Now I like the word to face the other way. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and go to Object and flip horizontal. And that's how I would want it to look. Now because this is sublimation and I need to mirror it, I'm going to go right back up to Object and flip horizontal because I need to print it mirrored. I just wanted to show you, first of all, figure out how you want your design to look, then flip it horizontally. Then lastly, because it's wider than the paper, I need to go to Object, and then I just need to rotate it 90 degrees. It really doesn't matter whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise. I just need my whole design to fit within the borders of the paper, or when I print it, it'll cut it off. Now I realized earlier I forgot to mention that I was going to use a metal ruler and a rotary cutter just to trim this down. I've used my paper trimmer before, and what I found was oftentimes, probably my blade wasn't sharp enough, I was pulling on the paper and that was causing some issues. So I've moved to using this metal ruler and my rotary cutter. Now, when I was on the computer, I told you, if you don't want your design cut off, it needs to be within the borders of your document properties. And I did notice that on the sides, a little bit of the design got cut off. So I went back and looked at it, and that's actually how the design is made. There's a little more cut off on this side than that side, so this side, let me think here. So I'm going to have a little bit cut off the bottom and then a little bit cut off the top. I think it's still going to look great. I don't think that's going to detract from it at all. Now, one thing different about this design is you don't have a clear border of the outside of it. Usually you do, and it makes trimming it up pretty easy. So this one, I might just have to try it a few times. Now the blessing of this, or the benefit of this, is everything outside the image is white. It's going to make the seams, the top seam, the bottom seam, and even the back seam, it's going to make that really easy. All right, so I'll go ahead and trim this down to what I think it should be. Then I'll just fit it on my cup, make adjustments where I need to. Now when I trim, I tend to see if it'll pull away before I move my paper or my ruler. And if anything needs to be retrimmed, that's what I do. All right, so my paper extends up just a little bit. I want to make that fit slightly better than that. So the way I like to do this, I like to have my cup upside down to start with. But before I do that, I need to make sure I have this going the right direction. Okay, so I want it like that. So I'll flip it over. And then in my case, the flowers are closer here. There's a little more white space here. So I want this side to be against the cup. I'll place it down first. Then I'll put the other side over it. Now by having it flat on my table, this way I can make sure that the top of my cup, which right now looks like the bottom of my cup, that the paper is straight on that. Once I have that, I can go ahead and lay it down, pull my paper as tight as possible, then I want to put the tape on the side of the paper that's on top, get it adhered to it, and then really pull tightly over the other side. Now it's easier if it's on something where it won't roll around. Then all I'm going to do is put a couple pieces of tape beside the center piece of tape, again adhering it to the top piece of paper, pulling tightly, and then pushing it down onto the cup. So once again, up on the top half of the cup, or actually the bottom half of the cup, and my seam is done. I just need to do the top and the bottom of the cup. Now, because this design has so much white in it, I'm not going to have to be quite as careful on my top and bottom seam. I'm still going to be careful, but I don't have to be quite as careful. If you're using dark images and there's darkness at the top and bottom, that requires a little more work. But in this case, I'm going to lay it down and I'm going to try to have it go straight around the top. And I'm going to put a little bit of a tug on it. And then just so that curves over the top of the cup, I'm going to do one more layer and I'll have it up higher. And I'll pull fairly tight on it so that it wants to fold into the cup. Now this might be overkill for you. If it is, do it the way that works for you. But this is a process that I learned from industrial fringe, and I love this process, so I tend to use it. Then I'm just going to repeat the same thing on the bottom. Then I want to use my fingernail and rub along the seam on the bottom piece of paper, and then I'm going to take something onto the top paper and try to really burnish that down. All right, we are ready to heat this up. Now this is a tumbler press that I ordered from Alibaba. You can also get it on Amazon, so I will link to that. You turn it on with a little green button on this side. It defaults to the last time and temperature that you use. The last thing I did in here was tumblers, so we're going to let that heat up to 385, and then I'll press it for 50 seconds. Now I was talking earlier about overcooking. The color of this baseball should have been maroon. And when I was making these, I ruined several cups. Either the baseball would be red instead of maroon, or the black name would turn to kind of a brown orange, and I found out I was overcooking those. Now on the tumblers that I overcooked, I was using the time that I used to use on a different brand of sublimation tumblers. I would do 50 seconds, rotate it, 50 seconds, rotate it, 20, rotate it, 20. Then I discovered with my new brand of tumblers, I really didn't need that much time. So today what we're going to try is we're going to do 50 seconds, then we're going to rotate it a little bit, do 20 more seconds, then I'm going to check it. If I need to put it back in, I can, but I think it might be done after just 70 seconds. So the seam's right here, and I'm going to put this cup into a little sling that I've made out of butcher paper. Okay, I want my seam to get a little bit of pressure, so I'm going to slightly rotate it. So the seam, instead of being straight up, is just slightly over here. Now this press closes almost completely, which is really a benefit. When you pull the handle forward, the timer starts. Now notice that the temperature dropped a lot, and that's normal because the cup was cold. So it will slowly rise back up to temperature. Now I'm going to rotate it so the seam is just slightly to the back. I'll close it up. And then I'm going to watch, and I'm going to open this after 20 seconds have gone by. And so I'll open it at 30. Notice the temperature's all the way back up. All right, so I'm just going to lay it on this tile for a couple minutes, let it cool off just enough that I can handle it. Now, I can't see the design coming through the paper really well yet, so that may not be enough time. Let me peel this back and see if I can tell. There's going to be some trial and error on these cups. But eventually, okay, that is not dark enough. Well, actually, I'm not sure. Let me pull it out just a little bit more. I don't want to pull it open so much that if I have to close it, I get ghosting. But I can see most of the ink is off the paper. So we're going to open it a little bit more. All right, actually, I think that's done. That looks good. All right, let's go ahead and move the tile. This is cooled off. Now, another thing, when I was having so much problem with my prior tumblers, even after having a lot of success before that, I watched videos, I read, and another suggestion was don't let this sit in the paper too long because it's still hot, so it's still processing. So I let this sit probably longer than I should have, but I honestly don't think it's going to have a negative result. But we shall see. All right, the big reveal. That is pretty. That is so sweet. And you can see that most of the ink came off. You're always going to have a little bit of ink left on your paper, but most of this ink came off. So that's a success. And then I'm not sure if I said, but this is HTV Romp paper. I love this paper. Now they did send this to me to try out. I didn't pay for it, but I honestly do love it. I have an old video where I tried multiple papers on some fabric, and that included one that was sent to me for free also. It didn't work out so well. So if you're having issues with any of your sublimation projects, it could even be the paper. And I've found that different papers work well on different substrates. So here's the cup. I think it's cute. We're giving it to her with her towel. Now again, these are not a matching set. They don't even really coordinate, but they both have sunflowers and she loves that. So we'll give her this, give her a couple of plants, and she will be so happy. And of course, the best part of the day is that we'll just all be able to spend some time together. Now, thanks so much for joining me. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing that. If you have subscribed or you subscribe now, click on that bell. Make sure that you've selected the all notifications. That way, YouTube lets you know anytime I upload new content. Have a great rest of your day, and until my next video, bye-bye.